Today we've got Kate Mederer with us from IGLU Therapy, and we are so excited to chat to her about cold plunging and especially with regards to women and women's health and wellness. So welcome today. We are so excited to start this chat.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to get stuck into the chat with you.
Okay, perfect. So let's start with a bit of an introduction on yourself and IGLU Therapy.
Okay, cool. So my background is actually a combination of marketing and business psychology, which is really about understanding human behavior, why we do the things we do, and what helps build sustainable habits. Cold therapy became very interesting to me through that lens, because when you step into cold water, you're not just having a physical experience, you're actually having a psychological one, and you're learning how to regulate stress. And IGLU started from a personal frustration. I wanted a cold plunge that worked well, but also looked beautiful in a home or a wellness space. And everything I saw was either DIY or just very unhygienic, and kind of very highly priced for what it was. So we built one, and that eventually became IGLU Therapy, designing cold plunge systems in South Africa that people can integrate into their daily wellness ritual.
Fantastic. And so let's dive into sort of cold plunge responses. Apparently, women respond better to temperatures that aren't as low as men. They get a cortisol spike. So how do you sort of manage that?
Yeah, so there's quite a lot that's been said online, in social media particularly, and I think a lot of people start to get things a little bit confused and pull out phrases that aren't necessarily what the science is showing. So just from a starting point, I am and IGLU bases all the information that we have through papers that we research, studies that we find, and we base it on that to build the information that we share. For women, the benefit of cold exposure often happens at warmer temperatures. What I mean by warmer, I'm saying between 10 and 15 degrees rather than extreme. So there's also a lot of rah that you need to ice bath at naught, which is obviously freezing. 1 degree, and just not the case. So men and women physiologically are made differently. It comes down to our body composition, it comes down to hormones, and women generally have a higher body fat and a percentage and different hormone responses. And this changes how we regulate temperature and stress. Interestingly, the opposite tends to happen with heat. So women often tolerate sauna heat far well and better than men. In other words, they can stay in longer. I think what we must just know is the takeaway is that cold therapy works for women. You just have to understand what your temperature need is. And with cold plunging, it is not about the ego. So it really is about, is 10 too cold for you? Start at 15 and work your way down to 10, and do not feel that you have to go lower. You are still going to get the exact same benefits. So it's just about understanding that and not having the ego conversation around, or the ego experience around having this ice cold plunge.
Absolutely. Okay, great. So what are some of the main benefits for women?
So I have 3 benefits, mostly, that the women are talking about, which are quite interesting. The first is mental resilience. So cold exposure is a very controlled form of discomfort. You step in, your body wants to panic, and you learn to stay calm anyway. And it's the ability to do those hard things, which transfers surprisingly well into everyday life. The second is inflammation management. Many women who train hard use cold therapy to help with soreness, joint recovery, PMS swelling, anything like that, where they're going to have that vasoconstriction, which is the blood vessels are moving towards the heart. So that helps with inflammation management. And then the third is the mental clarity. So the first was mental resilience, and the third is mental clarity. In a busy life, work, family, everything, a few minutes in the cold water becomes a moment of stillness. So you can step out feeling a lot sharper. But that's also down to the neurological benefits that are busy happening inside your body. So when we hear women talking about, to answer your question, what are the benefits, what are they finding, it often comes down to all of the neurological things that are happening inside, results in the outward show of inflammation management, mental resilience, and mental clarity.
It's amazing. Okay, so how does cold plunging help with jet lag? Apparently that's a thing. That's quite interesting.
So jet lag is really a mixture of sleep disruption, inflammation, and nervous system fatigue from traveling. So cold exposure can help in a few ways. When you enter cold water, your body releases norepinephrine and adrenaline, and this increases your alertness and your circulation, which is really what you're wanting to do. So if you arrive somewhere feeling foggy, depleted, a short cold plunge can act almost like a reset button for the nervous system. It won't replace your sleep, but it often helps people feel more awake, and it presents a much faster recovery after a long flight. And I think really the most important, again, I'll come down to, it's the neurotransmitters that are firing, that are kicking off what we need to have happen to change in our body to help us get through it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So jumping back a bit to what we were chatting about between sort of the differences between men and women, what are the biggest misconceptions, would you say, when it comes to cold plunging?
I think the biggest misconception is that it has to be extreme. And what I mean by that is people see videos online of someone sitting in a barrel full of ice and assuming that that's the goal. It's not. The benefits come from the cold stimulus, not from proving how tough you are. And a few minutes in water between 8 and 15 degrees can already trigger the physiological response you're looking for. And other misconceptions is that it's only for elite athletes. In reality, most of our customers are just people who want a simple daily reset. They want to de-stress. They want that kind of feeling after a really intense day. And I think that one must always question information that you're receiving and videos that you're receiving, and just question it quite. So and just take that ego away, because cold plunging just has no space for the ego.
Absolutely. Okay, great. So in your opinion, what are 3 areas that cold plunging specifically help athletes with? Because you did bring them up just now.
Yeah, so I think we all know that athletes and recovery and cold plunging is a given. It's extreme athletes, professional athletes have always been doing it. It helps the inflammation, it helps move lactic acid. So it's definitely, if you had to say what is cold plunging for, one would always say recovery. And then there are the other parts that is really nice to talk to and nice to explore and nice to share from an educational perspective. But coming back to the 3 ways that cold plunging helps athletes, I think it's practical benefits. The first, like I've said, is recovery. It helps reduce inflammation, removing lactic acid, muscle soreness after heavy training. The second is nervous system control, and I think we'll always find in any conversation that I'm having with somebody, I'm going to bring in nervous system control, because that's the biggest thing. So sport is stressful. Extreme sport is stressful. Being a professional athlete is stressful. They've got competitions, they've got pressure, there's expectations, they've got sponsors. So cold exposure trains you to stay calm while your body is under stress. And then I think the third one is mental toughness. When you voluntarily step into cold water every day, you build a habit of doing uncomfortable things. And that mindset transfers directly into sport. I think a lot of times we don't do enough hard things, and it's quite easy these days to get away from doing hard things, so to actually put yourself in there. So yes, the athletes benefit. There's a lot of a trickle effect that comes down to absolutely everybody at the end of the day with that.
Okay, amazing. So let's just go back to, you mentioned nervous system resets. How does all of that work?
Okay, so when you're jumping in, we'll get in slowly to the cold plunge. Your body goes into an immediate stress response. So there's a part called this cold stress, cold shock proteins are released. Your body is going into a fight, flight, or freeze response. What happens physiologically, your breathing starts quickening, your heart rate speeds up, and your brain says, get out, something's not right. But if you stay and you regulate your breathing and you learn to calm your breathing in and out, your nervous system will start to settle. And the shift from stress into calm is the reset. So over time, people get better at that transition, and it's not easy. And it carries us into everyday those stressful meetings. You've got somebody who's kind of triggered you into something, and you're wanting to breathe faster, your heart rate, you want to actually either smack them, run away, or just do nothing. Fight, flight, freeze. And once you've learned how to just slow your breathing down and bring yourself back towards yourself, you can respond in a much calmer state. So when you are in that stress response, your prefrontal cortex goes offline. It does not, your executive functioning is not going to work. And we want that to come back online. So we have to calm our system down. Like I said, regulate our breathing. It will come back online. And from a calm space, because now you've calmed your nervous system, you can then respond. Whether that is staying in a little bit longer in the water and just getting your breathing right, because your breathing is your biggest power here. You're in control. The water is not in control. And that is the beauty of how we reset and regulate and train our nervous system. You can then kind of take on whatever, parent meetings, training sessions, work meetings, you can take it on.
I can imagine. So it's interesting you speaking about, obviously, breath work comes into play hugely here. So maybe can we unpack the connection between breath work, for instance, box breathing and cold plunges? Obviously, that's a new skill that you acquire while doing cold plunging.
Yeah, I was talking to a person who refers to themselves as a somatic breathwork practitioner. And what they go in is they work with people in cold plunge environments. They pick up their energy. If they start to see that somebody needs a little bit of help, they'll go in and start working with them on the breathing. And breath work and cold exposure work beautifully together. But something else that they said was, this is just one of the modalities that can work in many instances. It just happens to be a modality like breathing that we all have access to immediately. You could do anything from doing fasted retreats or silent retreats or taking plant medicine, whatever it is that you're needing to help yourself. But the breath work and the cold plunge operate beautifully together because we all have it. We've got the ocean, or you've got a bath at home that you could put cold water in. And the moment that your body hits that cold water, as I've just said, you have a physiological response, but you get this gasping that takes place. It's the shock response. And the benefit really, really lies in slowing down the breathing, because you're training your body to stay calm in a very stressful environment. But not all of us actually know how to breathe. So we think we do. We're either not breathing from the diaphragm, we're breathing quite shallowly up here, and we're not really focused on what the breathing is doing. So as soon as you take your mind off the situation and you focus it on to, I am in control, I am going to control, and you're using your breath to control, you start to feel the power, and that's literally breath in a very stressful environment. Box breathing is probably one of the easiest ones that people can remember. If people are following the Wim Hof method, he's got quite a few other meditations that one can do with breathing. But the box breathing is just 4 steps, and I'm sure your listeners know, but if not, it's just the inhale, the hold, the exhale, the hold, the inhale, the hold. So there's just the 4, kind of, if you can imagine it, at each level, you spend 4 seconds. Yeah, just holding that space. And I think one can also then think about cold therapy is not really about the cold water. It's about learning how to stay calm when your body wants to panic. And the goal isn't suffering at all. The goal is control. And I think what the beauty there is again, when you're in a stressful situation, and this is really what it's all about, is how can I transfer my learnings from a cold plunge and from that practice into everyday life? Because then you've got the win. Then you've got, it's working with you everywhere you go. And just to remember, it's not about the suffering. Your tool is about gaining that control and just keeping it within you. Don't give that control to something or someone else, because then you can control your response. Again, I'll just come back to, we want our executive functioning to be on board. We want our prefrontal cortex to function like it should. And then I think just also to keep in mind, it's not easy at all. This is really, really hard. So when somebody sees somebody who's maybe practiced any modality for a long time, whether it's yoga, it looks like it's such an easy thing to do, and you do it and it's so damn difficult. Cold plunging is difficult. One day it might be that 10, absolutely. And at 10 degrees, one day it might work because that's the space that your body's in. And at 15 degrees the next day, it might be a completely different experience. The water might be cold. You might be having a lot going on in your mind. You're irritable. It's not the right time. Your phone is ringing. There could be a lot that make that 15 degrees just not work out for you. But that's the beauty, because that's what life is like every single day, kind of throws its balls at you.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think if I've answered your question between breath work and cold plunges, it's just such a beautiful synergy. The tool teaches you something that you can take out and transfer into everyday life.
That makes so much sense. Okay, great. So apparently there's evidence that plunging helps with hangovers. Is there any truth to this?
People say it does. Some people swear by it. I think if we have to break it down and go, what is a hangover? It's mostly dehydration, inflammation, and poor sleep. And it goes very similarly with what jet lag is. So cold water will increase the circulation. It releases adrenaline. It makes you feel more awake. We haven't even discussed the dopamine. And it might make you feel better temporarily. It's not a miracle cure, though. I have not found any evidence to support one shouldn't do it with a hangover if you've got a hangover, so I don't see why one can't. But for people just to remember that water and sleep and fewer drinks the night before are probably still the real solution.
Yes.
But I think that dopamine that I said we haven't even brought in, I think that also plays a part. So your dopamine's going to kick up by 350% and last over 7 hours per science. So if we have that happening, I think immediately you feel a heck of a lot better than you did before you got into it. But I really do think it's more about the physiological responses that are happening, which is such a beautiful case study to say at exactly what is happening inside your body. When you're doing something that your body's craving or that your body benefits from, hangover or jet lag, whatever it is, you can still see the benefits from it. I just wouldn't rely on cold plunging only. I think that you definitely need to rehydrate your system and get some sleep.
Absolutely. Okay, great. So let's chat about how this helps with our skin, especially with women, be more focused on skin in terms of using this as an extended beauty treatment.
Yes, I mean, cold therapy has always been part of beauty routines in different cultures, even just splashing your face with water. I think we've all been in situations where you're either so frazzled or frantic, you kind of splash water on your face and it just gives you a bit of a reset. It's very cool. It's very calming. And that's because there's blood vessels in the skin as well, and they're constricting. So there's no rush. So kind of that frantic heat feeling, you've got lots of blood vessels rushing to your skin. But in this instance, the cold causes your blood vessels to vasoconstrict, and then they reopen afterwards. And that improves circulation. I mean, you've got oxygenated blood coming back. It reduces puffiness. I think the big familiar one that we've got is the cucumbers on the eyes. And that's just, like getting rid of eye bags and things. But that's also cool. That's cool and calming. Aloe is also cool and calming. So I do believe that there are benefits. But I think it's probably a systemic benefit. Again, I think it's what you put in. I mean, your skin is how many percent? 75% water. So yeah, I think better sleep, better hydration, working on inflammation, and working on improved circulation will show up in your skin. Being tired, lack of sleep shows up in your skin. I mean, remember the days of people living in the nightclub era where the barman would be working throughout the night and they would come out looking so pasty. Just they never saw the sun, they never saw kind of any environmental elements, and they were just in a very smoky, dark, just everything affects their skin. So I think it's something to keep doing in combination with a whole bunch of other things. But it feels amazing.
Yeah. So more of a holistic, as part of a holistic management situation.
Yes. And I mean, I think what we must also just note is there are definitely people who can't do the cold. There are people who have, just for whatever their physiological reasons are, cold is really, really difficult for them. And I think it's important to also understand that and acknowledge that, and not force those people to think that their life is going to be less than because cold is just not for them. I think it's very important. Not for everybody, and if it's not, that's okay.
Yes, absolutely.
I think it's really, really important that they acknowledge that and they understand that.
Exactly. Okay, let's chat about metabolism. Quite a few people say that it boosts your metabolism, it aids in weight loss. Have any of what is your indication with this?
So the science will point to the fact that it does because it activates something called brown fat. And brown fat will become more active with cold exposure. because it will burn energy to produce heat. I think that one also needs to know that doing 3 cold plunges for 3 minutes at a time a week is not really going to move the needle. Everything has to come down to like a big package of what you eat, how you exercise, what your stress levels are, and for people to use this as kind of the weight loss tool, they would be a bit disappointed. I think it's just important that you can't rely on one certain modality to assist with it, but what it will do, it will activate your brown fat, and that will in turn speed up metabolism. Whether that speeds up your metabolism enough based on your daily food consumption and your daily metabolic rate is completely individual. So,
Yes.
you can't say that this is the latest weight loss tool, but we can say it does burn, it does activate your brown fat.
Absolutely. That makes sense. Okay, so the last question, what's the evidence around helping or assisting with chronic inflammation? I know we have touched on this already.
Yeah.
Because I know this is a dread disease driver, so it would be amazing if it's sort of assisted with something like that. Yeah.
It's so amazing. We've got a few patients who have cancer, and I'm not an oncologist. I am not a medical doctor. So please, take this from where it comes. But we've had some of our clients who have had cancer use the ice bath on the recommendation of their oncologists to reduce the inflammation. Most of those have been breast cancer clients, and I think there's a twofold in this instance. The one is chemotherapy, unfortunately, will affect your nerves. So they get burning feet, burning hands, burning skin, and the cold plunging helps with that burning. It's a really uncomfortable sensation across their skin. It helps with that in the vasoconstriction, and the physiological effects can be felt immediately. When it comes to chronic inflammation, I think there's a lot of factors again that people need to consider, but it's absolutely can reduce inflammatory responses and how the body perceives pain. So the research is growing in terms of how cold therapy might support dealing people with chronic inflammatory and autoimmune conditions. As an example, I have something called erythromelalgia, which is sort of the opposite to Raynaud's, in that if it's very hot, my hands, feet, and even like up my neck will inflame. So there's a big vasodilation that's happening, and it's a horrible feeling, and swelling. So like my rings will get stuck. If I have to walk into a room in winter and there's a heater on, the same thing will happen. And it's just kind of, I have to get out.
So uncomfortable.
Very uncomfortable. And all my body's craving is to get into a cold plunge, because I can feel that my body just wants this like shrinkage back. So it feels like my body's just vasodilating the whole time. Whereas with Raynaud's, the opposite is happening. So the people get blue hands because there's so much vasodilation. And I know I saw something where Wim Hof was saying how to get around that is just start by putting your hands into cold water. I'm not a scientist. I don't have the research papers in front of me. I think people would need to do their own research on that. But I know it would burn. And I know it would feel very, very uncomfortable. So I can't talk to Raynaud's, but I can say that the inflammation that I struggle with cannot be cured with medication. I have tried. I have spent time with rheumatologists, neurologists, dermatologists, all the ists you can think of. And it's been with me since my late teens. So and the ice is the only thing that helps. Cold, ice cold water. So yes, I do believe that there is help with chronic inflammation. I think that there's also, inflammation can also come from foods we eat, the environment that we're in. I think the more people who become aware of what their inflammation triggers are, the better. And if they can put themselves into situations which can calm it. And I think that's why it's so nice when we talk about cold plunging and the various benefits and who benefits, is that my hope is that people don't only see it as this is for athletes and you will feel better after your run or your cycle. If they can realize that actually I'm not an athlete, but I exercise, but I have other things that I need help with. I need to help calm my system down so I don't scream at my children or scream at my boss, or I need to calm my system down so I don't feel pain being triggered in my body, so that stress doesn't, when I have stress, I learn how to breathe properly. And So there's so many different things which are so cool to look at in terms of what ice plunging can give a person. And it's such a personal and subjective experience that there's definitely not a one size fits all about it. So I think those are, that's how I feel in terms of what the science is saying, what we're trying to share with everybody about how beautiful this practice is.
I think you're so right about that. I call it the health management plan because I have, for instance, I know my two weaknesses are my nervous system and I've got inflammation from a whole bunch of things. And I use management plans, whether it's lymphatic massage or, for instance, sauna, cold plunging. So I've got these things that sort of create a whole holistic wellness strategic plan, whatever you want to call it. But it's so important to consider all of these modalities because they really do make a difference when combined with a whole
Absolutely. Lifestyle, exactly. And I think that when we see the people going, rah, rah, ice baths, look at me, it just takes away from what it really can be. And it's
not
a
a
private,
trend.
not a trend. It's a private experience. I'm not comfortable ice bathing in front of people. It's my own private experience. It's my own thing that I want to do. I don't want people to talk to me. Another thing that we advocate, which can help, is to put a mirror up in front of you, whatever your ice bath situation is. And you can do this at home with ice. Pop ice into your bath and test it out and see if it works for you. See if you are getting the benefits that science is showing us we can have. And once you've felt those benefits, then start to think about if you want to invest in something more permanent. But really just start slowly with what you have. And if you put a mirror up in front, it's not to look at you or anything like that. It is more to look at somebody who can help you control your breathing. So you are going to be looking at that mirror and just watching the breathing and helping yourself breathe. And that's just such a beautiful thing that can happen with yourself in your own environment without a gym membership, and especially if you're not close to the ocean. Even the ocean is so difficult, I find, because the water's moving. It's very cold. It's like a cold shower. It's also very cold. It's just very difficult. But yeah, there is so many beautiful things that we have available to us where we don't have to spend a lot of money to help ourselves. And I think it's just about gently reminding ourselves of what they are before we feel like we need to start smashing a whole bunch of things inside us. And just understanding what our body does and doesn't like and responds to and doesn't respond to. The other thing, is that cold therapy looks simple. It's just water and temperature. But again, just to underline, the real impact is the psychological impact. So just, it's teaching you to stay calm when your body wants to panic. And like I said, the skill is incredibly useful in everyday life.
Exactly. Okay, great. I wanted to ask you, are there any collabs or workshops or anything happening like that in the next 3 months?
We've just finished Retreat Yourself. So we did the Retreat Yourself event in Grayson, which was completely amazing. And we went there with the option of just creating a space where people could create their own rituals around cold plunging. So what's going to be happening from now until, 3 months, you asked? We've got an event with Hyperice in Cape Town that will be happening in April. We've got some ice plunges at a lot of events such as the Epic, but those aren't really open to people that aren't part of it. And then we've got a somatic breath practitioner that we're working with the hope to bring some events online. I think especially in winter where people get a little bit nervous about cold plunging, it'd be really great to introduce a couple of people where they can actually feel that it's not so bad because the temperature doesn't have to be 3 degrees. But other than that, I think our next events will be where it's kind of open up to the public will be later on in the year. So for now, we've just got a few kind of small collabs that we're doing.
Okay, perfect. And how does someone get hold of, what is the easiest way to sort of contact you? Website, Instagram?
All of that. So website is perfect. Emailing hello@iglutherapy.com is perfect. IGLU is spelled with a U. And just on that note, we have IGLU spelled with a U because it's how the Inuits spell igloo. And a lot of our product names, all our product names come from their view and their wording on water, ice, cold water. So we really like how they adapt to the colds and how they embrace it. And that's why we've used a lot of our learnings from them. So website, email, there's a WhatsApp number, telephone numbers are online. Please, they can feel free to contact any of those. We will get back to them and guide them in any way we can.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We've learned so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks very much for having me.